and welcome to PDX Garden Home. I'm here. This is we had two what we call three sisters beds where we were growing beans and corn and squash. And I actually had a volunteer pumpkin. So I didn't intentionally plant it there, but it had popped up and it had a really healthy stalk to it. So as it grew, we just swung it over the net, and now we've got this kind of pumpkin hanging there. And you know, with these pumpkins, I love growing these pumpkins. I love it when you get around to Halloween time, and having my own pumpkin patch. I think it's, I don't know, there's something about it. Maybe it reminds me of childhood, but I just think it's really cool. I love to do that. But my success with growing pumpkins has been hit or miss. I'll plant out all kinds of pumpkin plants, and I'll usually get just a few pumpkins. And that's kind of the same thing this year has been the case. And so this guy hanging here is actually a treasured prize, so I don't want to lose him. And the stem is starting to dry up here, so I have a feeling at some point, if I don't support this, it's just the stem will break and it'll fall down and maybe get bruised or even break. So I don't know if this will work, or if we'll see, but I'm gonna try to tie up a net here underneath. I'm gonna take some extra netting that I have and try to tie it up underneath as a support structure for this to prevent it from falling to the ground. To just prevent it from falling to the ground when the stem dries up and it's fully ready. So I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm just making it up as I go, but I'm just coming up here and gonna tie this net into the other one. Just like that. Just gonna bring it over here, maybe I'll tie it up here, and again, the intent here is just to give it that support, that it doesn't just fall to the ground if the stem breaks. That's all. And I'm gonna pull together the ends here just in case. That way it doesn't kind of slip out. It doesn't come off and then the wind or something blow it and then it slips out the other end as well. So since we're spending time trying to secure this, may as well do it right. Do what we can do. So when it is ready to harvest, we'll have to cut this net from around it, but that won't be too much of a problem. It's just extra spare netting. When I put up these big nets, I often cut off the ends or whatever to make them look better. And so I have these little spare pieces of plastic netting, and rather than just throwing them in the landfill, I try to recycle or save them as much as I can and see what might come up that would be useful for that piece. And here we go. Found something useful for this small piece of plastic netting I had left over. All right, that's it. Okay, well, we've got a lot going on today, so I'll see you in the next segment. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to be looking at deadheading flowers in order to extend our season as far into the fall as we can. Then I'm going to show you what's going on with our eggplants this season. We're also going to look at trimming the raspberry canes and the raspberry bed, trimming that down. And finally, we're going to look at our compost piles. Hi, well, what I'm doing here now is deadheading, and so the concept of deadheading is both aesthetic and also to help bring about more flowers. We're at the beginning of September here, so I don't know how many more flowers we'll get before the end of the season, but I'm just coming through and taking off the heads of the flowers that are dying or close to dying, and that keeps the bed looking newer and fresh in the season. And at this point, as we kind of are in between summer and fall here, this is when there's a lot of deadheading to do, so I can't really keep up with all of it. So I just kind of do it as I walk by, and it is one of the art pieces for me of gardening that is kind of fun and relaxing. Technically with deadheading, what you're supposed to do is take the flower all the way down to kind of where the stem starts, or it uniquely starts, so all the way down to here. And so I did it on that one, but I don't always do that. Sometimes I'm lazy and I just come along and snip off the top. And so if you see me do that, you'll kind of know I'm aware that maybe I'm not doing it right. I'm just being lazy at that point. And a lot of these are not as dead. Because I've already been deadheading this bed quite a bit. So I think we've been kind of keeping this one up pretty good. But that's not the case with all our beds, as you'll see. And some of it, you get to something like this and you're like, well, they're browning, or they dead. I mean, they don't look as nice, so yeah, I'll go ahead and take those off as well. When I'm deadheading, it's often also a time for me to find weeds. And so go ahead and pull those while I'm in the process there. I find with these petunias, I find it difficult to figure out what to deadhead, because after they kind of die back, you get these stems, and I'm not quite sure if it's an old stem or one that's still waiting to bloom. And the other thing about these petunias is they're sticky. They've got sticky leaves. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that though, because I think it's old. They're browned on the ends there, so I think that's what it is. I think they're old stems. So we're here in what I call the round in the garden. This is the east side of the garden, the east garden. And yeah, we're going to continue deadheading in here. I haven't really done any deadheading in here the whole season. I'm just kind of letting things go, and things are looking great in here for now. So yeah, we're just going to come along and kind of clip back some things. These are the forget-me-nots, so they had blue flowers on them earlier in the season that I'm trimming back here a bit. And I'm still kind of learning the growth pattern of the forget-me-nots, so I don't know if they'll actually come back after I trim them here, but we'll see. So that's those, and there's some more forget-me-nots here. You can kind of see the leftover, the flowers there. Just put that back here. I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's a weed or if it was some kind of intentional growth here. It looks like a grass. I think we did have several kinds of grass we planted, and I think this is one of the grasses that's actually coming to fruition now. It might be kind of, there was like a frosted grass, a grass that was supposed to kind of create this bushy effect that looked kind of like frosting or frost sort of thing, and that's what this kind of reminds me of. So that may be what that is. I'll let that be for now, and I'll watch it and see what happens. Asters, that's what these guys are. These flowers, I was forgetting the name of them earlier, and these flowers are asters, and first time I've grown them, but they've been a real show in the garden this year, so I like them. These are Echinacea here. They took a while to kind of sprout and come up, so I don't know if they'll flower this season, but these Echinaceas are perennials, so assuming they survive the winter, we'll get them next year and we'll get flowers on them. What I'm clipping here is just old flowers that I don't even remember what they were, but whatever they were, they obviously are old, and I think they were a flower called Linaria. Some people call it the fairy flower. And then these, of course, are the dahlias. These are tubers. They are perennial. We planted them. There's another one here. We planted these for the first time this year in here, and so it didn't look like we were going to get any flowers from them, but they finally came out, so that's great. And then these are the Bachelor blue buttons. I love those. Well, I think those are the Bachelor blue buttons, but somebody who maybe is more of a flower aficionado might tell me I'm wrong. That might be a different kind of plant. I may have to check on that one. Some of these I've cut straight to the ground. Others of them I'm leaving some leaves on because I don't know if they'll reflower for me before the end of the season or not. I mean, this is perfect because I can cut it pretty close to the ground because it's got leaves around it. So if it will reflower, then that'll be great. But something like this, if I cut it to the ground, it doesn't have any more leaves, but I'm skeptical that it's going to reflower on me anyway. So I'll just go ahead, for sake of cleanliness, go ahead and take the whole thing. This is what I've been trimming, is these forget-me-nots with these teeny little blue flowers. So I'll leave that guy there. There's another one of these grasses that I think might be the frosted grass, but the fact that I've got another one here, I see two more of them, and they're kind of spaced out in a way that I'm pretty sure we put them here. They're not just weeds, so that's good. And they're kind of cool. I like how that's coming out. It's so cool to have different things going on here that are kind of hitting us different times, because this really wasn't growing here and looking like this a few weeks ago. So it's a new feature of the garden here for the fall. These here are Snapdragons. This is a perennial. I grew some of these last year, and then they came back the next year, so it's a nice plant there. This is, I believe, columbine, which is kind of a wildflower flower in certain regions, but we plant it from seed and grow it in our flower beds here. Okay, well, that's the task at hand. I won't make you guys sit and watch me the entire time. I'll leave you for this segment and catch you in the next one. So I'm looking at our eggplants today, and our eggplants just really haven't done that well. And I don't know if it was too cool at parts of the time, or if it was the shock of too much heat or not enough water. Maybe they got too dry. I mean, you can see what's happened with the leaves here, and you know, that might, to the layperson, that might look like it's drought damage or they got too dry, but I'm not sure that's the case. This could just as easily be some kind of disease that hit it, and I haven't had time to kind of investigate that further. But what I know is the leaves at this point in the year should be much bigger. This plant should be a lot bigger, and then the fruit on here should have grown already. And the fruit that's here and that we'll see in the other eggplants that we're going to look at today have all been here for weeks now, and they haven't grown. And so they produce these small fruits and they haven't grown, so they're literally just growing old. They're growing old at the small size they are. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest them now. I'm going to go ahead and cut them out and harvest these little mini eggplants, and I'll see if I can do anything with them, or whether somebody else in our family can do something with them for cooking at this size. But yeah, and the reason I'm going to go ahead and do that is because I'm hoping that maybe if the weather stabilizes before the end of the season here, that this will send the message to the plant that it should still be producing more fruit. We'll see, but that may be wishful thinking at this point. But yeah, that's what we have. So yeah, you can see they're all these dinky little guys, but they're dinky, but they're old, right? They've got signs of having been growing old on the vine there. We've got a different kind of eggplant here. And this guy should be much bigger. This plant should be bigger. I'm going to leave that one alone for now. And then at the end here, we've got another one, and it's somewhat stunted. And I think, you know, people who see this bed, they might say, well, you've got it too crowded, or it's in the middle of the tomatoes, so it's not getting enough sun. But I'm going to take you over to the other eggplant bed where we're not surrounded by tomatoes, and you're going to see basically the same thing. So I don't think that's the particular issue this year in our eggplants. All right, so as you can see what's going on in this bed here, you know, and that's what I was explaining a minute ago, is that these eggplants are not actually any better. They're small and have grown old on the plants. The plants themselves haven't gotten as big and vibrant as I would expect. And so, yeah, I don't think it's the lack of sun due to the tomatoes being around them in the other bed. I think it's just the growing conditions in the entire garden this year for these eggplants have not been good, is what it comes down to, unfortunately. Yeah, these are really dinky. This one here has a flower on it, so maybe if I cut some of this old fruit off and give it a break, it'll still do well before the end of the season. We'll see. That's what I'm hoping for. There's our biggest one yet. Not too dramatic. Well, while I'm here, we actually have some peppers in this bed. This is a pepper plant here, and this was, according to the tag, a Shishito pepper. I've never grown Shishito peppers I've never seen them as red peppers before. I've seen them in Japanese restaurants as green, so that's interesting. I'm sure red is the final color, so these should be ready to harvest. So I'm gonna go ahead and harvest them while we're here. Just gonna clip them off. So these actually seem to have done pretty good here. That's nice. These are fun to, well, the only way I've had them, like I said, in a Japanese restaurant is on the grill. So they'll roast them or grill them on a skewer or something, and they're a little bit spicy, but yeah, I like it. I think it's good. Some salt on it. There's another one here, and yeah, some baby ones. Even if a pepper's done on a plant like this, you know, if it's a pepper or tomato, even if they're not like good enough to eat, there's something wrong with them or whatever, I still would harvest them or cut them off, because you want to keep the plant producing more fruit. So the more you harvest, the more it thinks that it needs to keep producing more fruit. If I just leave them on there and let them wither and die, the plant thinks it's done for the season, and you're not going to get as much that way. Okay, back to the eggplants here. Kind of finish these up. All right, well, that's the end of the story here for the eggplants, or it could be. We'll see. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this later and see if we're lucky, and if we do get more flowers and more eggplants before the end of the season, or if this is it. If that's all we get this year in terms of the eggplants. I'll see you guys in the next segment. We're here at our raspberry bed here. This is about, I would say, 25 feet, maybe a little bit more, of raspberries. And these are the once a year, kind of June, July bearing raspberries. And so what you're supposed to do is cut to the ground the canes that bore the fruit last year, or that just bore the fruit this year, I should say. And then any new canes you want to leave, because that's what's going to bear the fruit next year. So if you do this wrong, you're going to kill yourself for having any fruit next year, right? So you don't want to cut any of the new canes. The only caveat to that is you're going to see me cutting new canes, but not to the ground. I'm going to top these off so that they're no higher than the fence post here, or the guide post for training them, because these have been kind of growing out of control. We put mulch down and we water, and so they've been getting taller and bigger than we really need them to be. And we did this last year. We had a good harvest this year, so we've got experience knowing that cutting it down this way isn't gonna really hurt it. So I'm gonna have at it here. I'm gonna cut pretty indiscriminately to top these off here. I've got a wheelbarrow hiding back here, so I'm gonna move it closer to me. And I kind of want to wear gloves when I do this, because these are a little bit thorny, which is surprising, because I'm not used to raspberries being thorny like that. They're not thorny the way a blackberry is, but they are stickly. I don't like to wear gloves most of the time, because I feel like I lose my tactile sensation of what's going on. So I like feeling my way through the garden, so I try to avoid gloves a lot, but that strategy sometimes doesn't do well. Just gonna cut some of this brush back so I can see what's what. I'm not exactly sure which ones bore the fruit, which ones didn't here. I mean, some of it's obvious. That I can see that there's some really brownish canes in there, so those are the old ones that should be cut back all the way to the ground. This one here, I don't think this is I don't know if this one is an old one or not. That's my problem. I may just cut these back and put the project, only kind of do the project halfway. I may cut them back so they're not bushing out over, I may cut them back so they're not bushing out over the trellis and all that, but then I may kind of have a bunch in there that I'm not sure about, that I just leave until the fall to see what actually browns out, what turns brown and is ready to pull out altogether before I make a final decision, because I'm not sure I can see for sure right now. We're at the end of August. I'm not sure I can see for sure which ones should be cut or not. Like, I know this one here, that one should be cut for sure, but these others I'm not quite really sure about. They could be browning just because it's been really hot and dry and we don't particularly water this corner of the garden. These I'm not sure about. This guy here I'm sure about. This guy should be cut to the ground for sure right here. So I'll go ahead and cut him. Cut that one out. But these I'm not sure about yet. To think about those. There's another one I know for sure. I can take that guy out. See, this has got some green growth coming off of it, but this branch for sure is an old branch that we don't need anymore. Well, that's the process. As you can tell, with as much as we have here, it's going to be some work. So I won't make you guys sit there and stare at me while I do this. I'll see you all in the next segment. As you can see, we have a compost challenge here. And it's even worse this time of year because everything's getting harvested and we'll have more and more kind of the leftover garden waste to kind of throw in the compost. So this bin that we have here, it starts about right there and it goes all the way to here. So I mean, that's a good maybe 8 feet wide and another kind of 8 feet deep there. And we have 3 of those. And the first 2 are basically full, and ideally we would have left one open so that we could like turn them between each other, but we just ran out of room, so we just kept filling this guy up. So that's one of the features of gardening at this scale, is that you generate a lot of waste and you have a lot of things to compost. And so we do it, but not super professionally. We don't do the turning it all the time kind of thing. Turn it occasionally. And probably the biggest challenge with the compost piles here is that in the summer like this, we're in the beginning of September, but since July through September, these haven't really got enough moisture. To get your compost to really decompose, they have to stay relatively moist, and these are pretty dry piles. So way ahead into the fall, they'll get plenty of moisture though, and then the problem will be maybe they'll get too much moisture. So, but turning the compost or managing the compost is usually last on the priority list around here. So yeah, just having a place to throw it and kind of let it decompose, and then we put it back out in the garden beds. Much of this will go back out in the garden beds next spring, before we hit the next year's growing season. Well, unfortunately, that's it for today. It was good being able to talk to you and have you kind of see some of the things that we're doing. And as always, if this is something that you enjoy watching, if you find value in this, tell your friends, tell your family, and hit that subscribe button, because the more people that we get kind of involved in this community, the better it's going to go. Okay, well that's it for this week. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.